Welcome to the Small Giants Fishbowl. This topic is Writing to Lead. This fishbowl features Jim Kalb of OptiFuse discussing why it's important for leaders to put pen to paper or fingers to keyboards and create a thought leadership narrative that connects employees, customers, and the community alike. Okay, here we go.
Thank you. So, hi, my name is Jimmy Kalb, and member of Small Giants now since November, so I'm a relatively new person here, but I really enjoy it. I own a company called OptiFuse, and OptiFuse is a manufacturer of overcurrent protection devices. That would include like fuses and such. In fact, I'm not sure if you guys can see me, but like these are these little parts that we sell and such to our to a variety of people. Mostly who our customers are, though, are industrial users. They're people who use our product in some of their products. And so they need to be somewhat approved by a lot of different people throughout there. And so one of our challenges that we did when we started to get going here is the fact that we didn't really have these relationships top to bottom with a lot of different people. We knew how to make fuses. We were private labeling fuses for some of our biggest competitors out there. And so that's what kind of got us going into this business. And when our competitors, or when those people that we were private labeling for decided they were going to get out of a large segment of the business, we decided to jump in and create our own brand called OptiFuse. But again, we didn't really have a lot of those relationships all set up. So we kind of really floundered for the first, 8 years. And we went to a point where we were almost out of business. In 2009, we were ready to shut the doors. And because we really couldn't find a way to, couldn't find a way to really touch the people that we needed to touch. You have to remember, in our business, we have a lot of professional buyers. It's not like going out and spending your own money like going out to a restaurant. So go out to a restaurant, that's your own money, you have an emotional attachment to your money. Now you're talking with somebody who has nothing to do, it's not their money, they don't care. They want to just remove headaches off their desk. They just want to get these things out of there. And more importantly, a lot of the buyers who actually buy our products have to be approved all the way up and down by engineers and by manufacturing into that. So it takes a lot of work to try and a lot of coordination before we can actually sell a product to the customer. So you have your money. There's a certain amount of transfer of trust. A friend of mine, Jack Daly, who's a big sales guy, talks about sales is nothing more than trust. And so if you trust somebody, you'll typically buy from somebody. And our product is a safety critical device. It's there to protect equipment. And so that's why people use fuses in the first place. So we started here in about 2009, really having a really bad time and getting to a point where we're running out of money, getting to a point where we're having all kinds of issues with getting to our customers. And so someone suggested, I was also kind of a member of SCORE at the time. I got some consulting, started executives that give free consulting advice through the Department of Small Business. I think it's the SBA that actually funds SCORE. So they were doing a seminar on creating a newsletter or a blog or social media and using social media to reach out to your customers. I thought that was a good idea. So I went to this seminar, $20, $30, something like that. And they really talked about creating this newsletter. And I was also kind of a disciple of Seth Godin. And so Seth writes a daily blog, has been doing it, 15 years perhaps. And he's really kind of a marketing guru as far as permission-based marketing and sending things out like that. So I decided I wanted to do something like that and sent out this newsletter that was going out every day, like Seth. It was 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs. And we had a list of customers that were probably maybe 6,000, 7,000 names long of contacts that we had. And so what we were able to do then is load those into a constant contact, which is a mail server that we use, and create this blog that was actually more or less a newsletter, a daily newsletter, than it really was a blog. A blog would maybe reside on someone. You have to get someone to come to your blog, whereas we kind of were a little bit more proactive. We actually used constant contact to send out a mailing to our customers, and they would get it every single day. And what I found out really, really, really quickly was people didn't want things every day. period. They really, really do not want to get something in their mailbox, no matter how short it is. And so we quickly changed it to an every other day. It was actually Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And on Mondays would always be about our products. On Wednesdays would be about an application or something else. And on Friday was just a general musing that we were looking at. And the amazing thing about this was that we can actually see statistics on who opens our newsletter or our blog every single time we send it out. So I could see on Mondays, nobody opened it up. On Tuesdays or Wednesdays, nobody opened it up. And on Fridays, the general musing, people really seemed to like that. And it was just about life. It was just about us and how we are and what we're doing and such. And so eventually I ended up dropping, maybe it was about 6 months to 8 months into it. I ended up dropping the Monday and Wednesday portion of it and kind of expanding the Friday and turning it into almost like a newspaper column that just talks about life and talks about technology. It talks about our shared hopes, dreams, and fears. And what it really was about was just trying to get something into our customers' hands once a week. And something that said from Jim Kalb at OptiFuse. And that's what it ended up, turning out to be. Hamza, do you have, or Ashton, do you have what it looks like? Just like a screenshot of what it, you can see how simple this is. This is one I did a few months ago. It is not elaborate in any way, shape, or form. And I do it so it's actually written in Word, and I just cut and paste into this little template and Constant Contact or MailChimp or there's 100 mail servers out there that do something like this. And it's really, really simple. And it's got down to, it's now 1,000 words, and it really comes out almost like some sort of formulation that I come up with every single week. And it's usually based on a conversation I'm having or a lunch conversation I'm having or a dinner conversation I'm having with somebody. So it really becomes really, really simple for me to just write down thoughts, and it only takes me a few hours to actually do it. Although after about 400 of these things, I'm starting to run out of really good ideas to put down there. And so sometimes they have to go back. And I was talking with Hamza and Ashton earlier about how I joined Small Giants just because the fact that I can come up with some good ideas, because there's all sorts of members and people out there that I want to now talk about them. I want to talk about Tom Walter. I want to talk about other people who are members of Small Giants, because and I'm not trying to replace Bo Burlingham. Really, I'm not, but I'm sure there's everyone else has some really great ideas and really good stories that are out there. And really, it's just about storytelling. And so the blog itself goes each week, and it starts out with some sort of observation. And the observation usually is something I see, someone getting a ticket, and then causes me to think about that person getting a ticket. And maybe I'm thinking about, all right, well, or I get a ticket. More importantly, I get a ticket, and then I think about, all right, well, why did I do that? That was really stupid. How many times do I have to get a parking ticket in order to not get parking tickets anymore? And I call it, maybe I start talking about the tuition payments into the School of Hard Knocks and other things, and I continue to go to school until I learn that particular thing, and then I maybe will talk a little bit more about why we do things like this, and I'll do a little bit of research on Google and try to understand what it is that we do. And so the whole meat of the thing is a little bit more of an observation is why we continue to make bad decisions in life. And then it just usually sums it up by talking a little bit about how we can apply that little lesson, that little aha moment to our own lives. And that's really all it is. And you'd be surprised, though, how universal these thoughts really are. And if I'm thinking about it, it's usually because somebody else is thinking about it. It's really kind of surprising how universal, people like to talk about their kids. People like to talk about their futures, their jobs. If they have employees, they either are an employee or they or have employees. And it's really interesting to how many people will contact me after the blog comes out and actually tell me how that applied to their life. I'll get at least a dozen people every single week who will open it up and want to have a conversation about how this was the best one ever that I've sent out. The reality is, I don't think it's any better than the other one. I usually start off Friday morning. They go out Friday morning at 8:30 Pacific Coast time, and I work on them Thursday night, and they usually come home somewhat later on Thursday nights, and my wife's already asleep. So in the morning we wake up and I read it to her, and I say, "What do you think?" And she'll usually say, "Oh, that's really good," or that's not so good. And I'll change it around and help me. She's like my editor there, so I can actually bounce some ideas off of her. Or I'm having I might have a hard time just like trying to sum it all up at the end. Like, all right, I'm at 900 words. I need to sum this up. I need to cut it off. Where do I need to go? And so in order to do that. So, but she'll say, yeah, that one's okay, or that one's good. And I'll think that I just like mailed it in sometimes, and she'll think it's great. And so I'll send it out anyway, because I'm not going to rewrite it at 7:30 in the morning. And it goes out to these people, and then all of a sudden it's like, that's the best one ever. I go like, really? I thought that would really, it's just like sucked, to be honest with you. It didn't really say much of anything. So it really hits people in a different way. But the most important thing is that people continue to read it. So every single week I send it out. I lost a lot of readers at first. They just opted out, and they continue to opt out. I get 2 or 3 people that opt out every week. But I add in a bunch of people every week as well, because it probably adds about 10 to 12 people every week. People sending it to their friends that want to join, or a lot of people got it after I went to the summit from Small Giants. They wanted to be included on some of this stuff as well. So I collect business cards that people say, hey, I'll add me to your list or whatever. So I'll end up doing something like that and adding it so it continues to grow. But maybe 30% of the people will open it up. 25 to 30% of the people will actually show that they actually open up and are reading on it. And maybe less than 1% will actually click on a link that I might have set up to do something for them to go to. Maybe to see a video. Maybe it's a TED Talk I'm talking about or something like that. And some people will do that, or a song that I heard that I really like, and I'll add that into as a clip into the thing, into the blog. So that's basically it. The beautiful thing again is it gets out there, it touches people, and it tells people that we're human. We are the David versus Goliath. We're the small guy. We want to do business with them, and people want to root for David. They really, really, really do. And so, because our marketplace, I didn't really talk about what the competitors of OptiFuse, but we have 2 huge, competitors in this. Imagine if there's Eveready and Duracell, and name the third guy. Or back when there was film, there was Fuji and Kodak, and name the third guy. So we are the third guy. But the thing is that message is kind of resonating. We've now spent the last 2 years on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies, and we continue to grow at a nice controlled rate of about 25% a year since believe it or not, 2009. So that's kind of was the turning point, was the blog. And so even though I'd like to, it's a lot of work sometimes, I think, a couple of, maybe 4 or 5 hours a week, I'm afraid to stop it. I'm afraid to stop doing it in any way, shape, or form. So, and there's some interesting things that happen along the way too. I don't know if I should stop here for a second to let people catch up and ask questions, but I can continue on talking about really some ways that has really helped my business. Do we have any questions? Not? I'm going to keep going. So
yeah,
I was in.
Tell some stories.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm in Boston. I go out to like a TED Talks type of a thing, conference every year at MIT, and so I was out there visiting a customer, and I didn't even know it was someone I wanted. They're $1 billion company, and I didn't even think I would get an appointment, but I knew who they were. A big catalog company that sell a lot of automotive aftermarket type of stuff. And I got the name of the person I needed because I was at a trade show. I picked up his card, and I wanted to talk to the buyer out there, a company called Stone Ridge. And so I go out there and I was really surprised on how easy it was, because I his card. So he'd already been getting my blogs for maybe it was in November, and I went out there in April. So about 6 months been getting this blog. So I say, Steve, my name's Jim Kalb from OptiFuse. I'd really like to come out and see you. And he goes like, yeah, hey, that'd be great. Come on in, see me. I go, wow, that was way too easy. So I go out there and I spend about an hour with him. I pitch him on my products. I pitch him why it would be great for our products to add into his catalog. He doesn't have a competing line. It would be really, really cool to work with him. And at the end of the hour, I did my whole presentation. I'm asking him questions and such. And the question was, I said, so do you have any questions about anything? He was like, yeah, I have one question. How do you come up with an idea every week for your blog? And so I had to stop a little bit and go like, yeah, I just really wanted to, I'm not sure if we really don't need fuses or circuit protection in our catalog, but I really just wanted to meet you and see where you're at and find out where you're at and where you're going. And as it turns out, I gave him some stuff and then I said, well, let's stay in touch and see whether or not anything. So as it turns out, he ended up sending my blog to several other people in the company, and they decided that they want to bring in circuit protection. So they created a whole new section in their catalog, and they've actually turned into a really good customer of ours along the way. And then the other one was I was actually at the same trip, and I was actually it was in Boston again, but it was a different trip. It was a little bit later on. It was like more or less October, and I'm training one of my sales managers out there, and we went to one of our distributors up in North Boston, and so she's giving the presentation and such, and then afterwards, once again, there's about 8 or 10 of their salespeople around there that we're trying to train about our products, so they can go out to the customer base and use our products and sell it and represent them well. And afterwards, so I'm talking to the manager of this particular office, and he says, how do you come up with all these things? And then he tells me, well, here in Boston, we get your blog. It comes in here at 11:30 every Friday, and we close down the office and we bring in lunch every Friday, and we just discuss the blog. And now this is a company that has they represent maybe 150 different manufacturers that they're selling to their customers. And they're spending an hour a week talking about us and our product and at least just the ideas that we're talking about and such. And there's no commercial that goes along with this. As far as some of the nuts and bolts that go on, there's some real good and do's and don'ts about creating your own newsletter. First of all, it really, really, really needs to be in your own voice. If you're the president, if you're the marketing manager, if you're the public relations person, it needs to be in your voice. You can't be speaking for somebody else. I don't try to. I'm not trying to talk as the president of OptiFuse. I'm usually just talking as Jim Kalb and observations that I make, and I'm trying to create a relationship with them. But ultimately, I represent the company, and again, they see the OptiFuse. It comes from OptiFuse. Second most important thing is it can't be a commercial. People will not sit there and read a 1,000-word commercial every single time. And in fact, if you sign onto our website and you see some of our blog archives, there's only one sentence at the very end of every single blog, and it usually starts, "Thank you very much. I'll talk about the moral. I'll talk about everything for the week, the takeaway." And then I sign off with, "Thank you very much for supporting OptiFuse," where we try to, and then a different tagline. So if it was about if it was about paying dues or something like this, or tuition payments, where we'll say, "Thank you very much for supporting OptiFuse," where we hope to get it right the first time. And we don't talk about having to repeat those same mistakes over again. And that's all it says. And then it's just my name and my sign off. So it cannot be a commercial as far as for your particular customers and such, because that's the biggest turnoff ever. Another thing is it really needs to be consistent. So if you can't send it out on a Tuesday one week and send it out on a Thursday the next week. It's got to be, my blog goes out at 8:30 every single week, plus or minus 5 minutes. I'm still trying to dial in the time. Sometimes I'm thinking that maybe 8:15 might be better, or 8:35 might be better, but it really goes out at 8:30 every single Friday morning, Pacific time. And I can set that up. And so it really doesn't, there's only been one time in in 6-7 years now that I haven't sent it out, and that was because I had some technical difficulties in Taiwan. I was traveling, and for whatever reason, the internet went down, and there was like no way to get it out, and it was somewhat embarrassing. I just wrote something up on my phone and sent out almost like a text message out that I could do, and just said, because of technical difficulties, the blog will go out on Monday instead. So, and that's really the only time I've actually ever missed a Friday morning on that. And then Jim Rome used to always say, it's pretty amazing as far as the content goes. He has only 2 rules. Jim Rome's a sports announcer who has a call-in show and takes calls from all his listeners, and it basically says, "Have a take and don't suck." So the message I try to get out is usually somewhat well thought of, and so I take time throughout the whole week. I have 7 days to think of a topic, and I'm constantly writing down things in my phone, just little notes, little reminders. And that's usually the takeaway for that time. And now, I know I'm going to write for the next couple of weeks, even though now I'm trying to just come up with the narrative, and how do I think about trying to change the narrative a little bit, and how do I bring up this aha moment? Because people are getting tired of me having lunch with people, but it's usually the way it usually happens. I'm having lunch with someone, and I'm having a conversation, or I'm talking with somebody over some coffee someday, and they bring up a really good point, and I say, hey, that would make a great blog. And so I write it down, and just as an idea, but now that people are getting tired, they're like, you can't have that much lunches with people. You really can't have that much coffee with people. You got to probably have some work somewhere along the way. And sometimes it's just something I read in a book, or sometimes it was a fishbowl that I got onto, and I was like, hey, that was a great idea. And then I'll talk about that a little bit. So sometimes it's just, you try to find different ways to do things, but the idea is always have some sort of take and don't suck. And if you need to do your blogs at 400 words, do it 400 words. I find mine, I need to get 1,000 words to get my ideas through. And again, just be yourself. That's really the whole idea, and be consistent. People don't need, there's an old Calvin and Hobbes thing where he writes a report. I'm sure how many people, how old remember Calvin and Hobbes. It was a comic that was out for years, and it's one of the funniest comics ever written. But he writes this class report, and it's absolutely all the facts are wrong. He says, look, it's in a great folder. I'm going to get an A on this because it's in the presentation folder. And he ends up getting like a D- or something to that effect, or F+ or something. And he says, well, how could you do this to me? It's in a great folder. The whole idea is it's the content that really, really matters. It has nothing to do about the folder. So as you saw, Ashton put up, it's about as plain vanilla as I possibly can have as far as the folder and how I send it out. But it's the content that why people look at it initially. So did I hit all the good points here?
Yeah. So on the same line as coming up with aha moments and ideas, we had a question come in that says, if you don't have an observation and an aha moment, what are some practices you do to come up with fresh ideas? Do you just have a goal, or?
Okay, so some of these things is if you steal ideas from one person, that's called plagiarism. But if you steal them from a lot of places, that's called research.
Right.
And so I will take things like from Seth Godin, because he sends out something every single day. And some of it is an aha moment. Sometimes it's Burnett Jiwa. Sometimes it's Darren Hardy from Success Magazine. He puts out a daily blog that I get. He actually does a video of it, a 3-minute video every day. Sometimes it's Jim Rome. Sometimes it's Success Magazine, or Inc. Magazine, or Forbes Magazine, or there's 100. Or the other things I do a lot of times is as I drive into work, I listen to Wharton 111. It's XM radio, so it's from the Wharton School, and it's usually about something about business, and an idea, or someone's usually pitching a book somewhere along the way. But for the most part, it's got some good ideas. I also try to stay as much as I possibly can away from politics, religion, all that. I don't completely changed the way. I wrote a really interesting blog about the polarization of America. It wasn't necessarily to promote one candidate or the other. It's the fact that we have these two bell-shaped curves that used to be under what would consider to be an average American. Today, those two average Americans are kind of just splitting apart from each other. And you have these two, bell-shaped curves now on either side. And the average American, there is no such thing. Anyway, so that's about as political as I somewhat get on some of these things. But that came from, wasn't an aha moment, but I'm sure that was an idea that somebody else had that I borrowed and created.
Also, something came through and it says, what are some of the lessons learned you had early on?
Okay, one of the biggest lessons is people are going to opt out. Do not take it personally. And they're like your friends. You're like, my mom opted out or something. Like, opted out, and the other thing they can do is they can mark it as spam, and and you said it was spam as well. Really? It wasn't my mom, but it was a good friend of mine, and then I kind of razzed them about it when I saw them later at some football game or something. He was like, yeah, I just get too much stuff, and I think it was my assistant that actually did it and just got rid of a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, I don't care, but so you have to kind of have some thick skin. Although I grew up on the sales side of the business, so I've already kind of have the thick skin. But that was one of the biggest things there is. The other thing is really don't spam people. Allow people to opt out. Allow people to, if they don't want it, get rid of it and almost kind of thank them. One of the first things I learned when I had people opting out en masse, because again, they were getting something every day. So I had 200 or 300 people opting out at a time. And so I just have to continue. One of the other things you learn is continue to build your mailing list. And so our outside salespeople, they add names of people they saw, some new contacts, because that's one of the ways that they can get involved with us as well. And the same way, I don't talk about products anymore. I really don't talk about, it's a whole different form, and that's not what our blog is all about. You can say, well, then what good is it if you don't talk about your products, you don't talk about your services, or you don't talk about whatever it happens to be? It's a soft sell. It really is. It's getting to know us.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most important things is you send your email as Jim, but you say Jim of OptiFuse. So it keeps the name in front of people's faces every week. We had another question come in that says, what are some topics that you get the most feedback from on people? So like, what are the high level categories that just really seem to resonate?
It comes down to hopes, fears, and dreams. And so when talking about the future, I'm talking about the future of our children. I'm talking about something that they, how to be a better person, how I become a better person, how my parenting styles, or I'll talk about, because people tend to equate managing employees with managing kids, but you don't really manage kids. And that kind of thing as well. But the idea here is it's hope, fears, and dreams, and people have the same ones, and they chime in and say to me, hey, that's exactly what I was thinking about the other day, or that was really good. And also, the other ones that have been high level have been the ones that cause the people to think. I do a couple ones on decision making, and it kind of stole some of the ideas from a guy named he wrote The Black Swan. I can't think of his name now. But anyway, he wrote things about decision making, about how to make, you can make good decisions and have a bad outcome, or you can make bad decisions and have good outcomes. People like that kind of stuff. It's almost technical. So I think because I have a lot more engineers that I send this thing to as well, people like to have their brain stretched a little bit more. So that's what I found.
Yeah, that's a good point. Know your audience and kind of what they're looking for. But then again, when we were talking, you said that it always surprises you who says like who will chime in and email you like, oh, this week really resonated with me. And you're like, man, really? Because I felt like that one wasn't my favorite. So you just never know. So you just have to try, right?
And I've done a couple that I really am proud of. In fact, there's some people who said, hey, you should compile some of your better ones and put them in a book. And you got a book right here. You've done 400 of these things. I can't imagine, figure about 4 pages each. So there's about 1,600 pages worth of material here. And as it down, I don't even know which ones I would choose, because ones I thought were good, other people said, yeah, it's probably not your best one. And other times there are a couple that I really, really like. I like one that I did about 4 years ago about the difference between love and trust, and about how one, I think I might even sent it to you. But the idea here is that it's how trust is so much more important than love, because when you love somebody, it's unilateral. You can love your dog and they don't have to love you back. And such. But when you trust somebody and someone trusts you, it's a unilateral thing. You trust them, they trust you. They have to have some kind of buy-in and consent into that. And it was a great topic, and I got a lot of feedback on that particular one that I did that 4 years ago, something like that. And it's like, can you imagine some CEO of some fuse company talking about love and trust? And it's also because it's outside of most people's realm, but that's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear about fuses. They don't want to hear about circuit breakers. They want to hear about things that are meaningful into their lives.
Okay, well, that's it for this one. Check out more Fish Bowls exclusively for the Small Giants community at smallgiants.org.